let's now jump into our first lab for today. Our first lab is the environment setup. So that shall be a very interactive training. That means everyone shall have the chance to work on that. So we have now a repository. When you go to the repository and you click on that link, obviously for the ones who don't have access to the slide, I just opened this one now in my additional browser tab here in that case. So then you see that I have just created, for that training, Dataverse beginner workshop. So in that case, you see that this is, not only featured by M65 core convention here. This is in that case also, that workshop has been here from the beginning. When I just talked with the guy, it was absolutely clear that we have this workshop here, and I'm really grateful for having the chance, to work with these guys here. In that case, in that 4 hours, you will learn, a lot of these things, which we just go step by step through this. And there's also a roadmap, but there's also, in that case, a lab folder. And that lab folder includes 8 labs, which we want to do today. There's also a bonus lab at the end, the why Dataverse versus SharePoint at the end. But this is something I have already calculated from the time I think we might have the time to do this. That's why I have also prepared some kind of PowerPoint slides for that. So in that case, the environment setup is today's first lab we just want to do. In that case, how we want to do this is pretty simple. So I will, first of all, let you do the lab. And then a bit later, so 2-3 minutes later, then I will come and demo this. So I will give everyone then the chance just to do this there. So what is important is, first step is you just create your own clean browser environment for that. So that's very important. Majority, I think, will use Microsoft Edge. That's mostly connected to your work account if you're using a work laptop. And that might interfere if you don't want to use Dataverse in your work account. If you want to have a dedicated training environment, then obviously just do and follow the steps in part 1. In part 2, then you're obtaining your training license. So there are 2 ways how to do this. Number 1, which is the preferred option, is create your own so-called Power Apps developer plan. With that Power Apps developer plan, you are able to get your own dedicated environment if you're not blocked by your IT. If you're blocked by your IT, then, well, that happens. I've seen that several times. Last year during the Microsoft tour in Frankfurt, I've seen a few people have been blocked by the company, by the governance, so they couldn't do it. But if you can do it, obviously it's great. You're just getting enough capacity, especially for this training, but also build, your own Dataverse model where you can later build on your own Power App, for example, as well, or some kind of automation with Power Automate as well. And if that doesn't work for you, then I'm prepared as well. So in that case, that's only the option for if you want to do the training, but there's nothing else possible for you to create. I've created 24 accounts in that case. So if you just go in here, so then you will see that you do have 24 accounts. Do me a favor, don't delete the naming in that case. What you do is if you just go to this, just put your name into the bracket. So everyone just knows that is now taken by that specific person. So then that's easier that, not 2 people are just getting this one, So I would say that's also a way. If there's not so many people today there, maybe then we can just, save you some time and you just take this one. But this is only available for this day to day, or this week. But after this, then I will just, shut down the environment. So if you want to work longer, so in that case, it's then better if you just take the other one. So in that case, let me go in here, and I give you 2 minutes now time that you just go step by step to this. If you have any kind of questions, please let us know in the chat. So there is not really so much to demo today in that lab, but in the upcoming labs, of course. And by the way, if you're just asking what your password is for this one, for the environments, workshop 2026. So if you just take this one, then you do get your access to it. If you get your access to it, be sure you're also selecting the right environment, but I come to this a bit later. Good. So how many people have created their own environments, and how many people or have their own environments already, and how many people are just taking the labs here? So as I can see, no names here. So usually that happens in lifetime. I assume that no one is just really taking this account in that case. So good. Then everyone, I assume, has his or her own account in that case. That's great. Alrighty, good. I would say let's go now with the next one. And now we really starting now into our training. And our training is about the data model and solutions. Well, if you have heard about the concept of solution, that's great, but maybe there's the one other thing you just don't know about, or maybe you haven't heard about this one. So, well, you have an environment, so your clients just comes and wants, work with that. So it's typically the production environment where people are working with that. But if they want to work, obviously you can't develop at the same time. I hope I never will see again that someone is really doing live development on a production environment anymore, because I've seen that so many times in my life. And I can tell you that never ended good. Never. So even doing live fixes on a production is not really something I would really recommend, because it doesn't make any sense. So just imagine you do have a company with 500 people, and let's say they're committed and they want to work with a solution with a Power App, for example, you just have provided. And Dataverse is, the way working, backbone of that. But if you find any kind of a mistake, an error, and you want to fix it, or maybe you just want to extend that with new features, you just can't do that in a production environment. Because then what you're doing is, especially if you're just trying to find out a mistake which is not clear, then you just try to debug. And based on that, you're slowing down, or even you stop processes on a production environment. People can't work anymore. That's super if you want to destroy a lot of revenues on one day on client side, but obviously that's not what we want. We want reliability there. We want to be a trustful partner. Obviously, we don't do this. So we need at least a second environment. Perfectly, you do have this typical strategic 3 environments. a so-called development environment, a so-called test environment, and a so-called production environment. And you need to, obviously, in a development environment, you just develop what the client is asking you for. In a test environment, you're just testing together with the client, because a client can't test on a development environment, because that's your own environment where, and you, while the client is testing, you never know when the client has time to test. You still continue with a workload from, from Jira or Confluence or DevOps or whatever you're just using, your backlog. Based on that, obviously on dev, no one should test, only on test. Why we do have a test environment? Because before we really go into the production, someone have to, from the client side, to give a thumbs up and say, yes, now it's good, now we can really deploy this to production. And that kind of deployment mostly happening automatically today with pipelines in Power Platform. But before we come to this, we need something, a technology, how we can transport this kind of so-called components which we're developing. And that's what is called solutions. And that ALM here stands for Application Lifecycle Management. That means if you automate these things, that at the end it's just only a click where all that kind of things been exported from a development environment into a test environment, or exported out from a test environment to a production environment, at the end. So that is usually the cycle, how it at the end goes. So in that case, that's what LMS and that's what solutions are for. Solution can contain a lot of so-called components. That can be tables, columns, forms, views, apps, but it can also be Power Automate flows. It can also be now Copilot Studio agents, for example. It can be environment variables. It can be a lot. A lot of these components, also called artifacts, can be transported now with solutions. And that's why the solutioning concept is really nice. And that's why Dataverse is becoming more and more important, not only in the Power Platform, but also, with Copilot Studio, which is still, some kind of Power Platform, where I don't see that necessarily only Power Platform only, because it can be used, from everyone, but that's a different topic. And what's very important is that solutions do only contain metadata and not really business data. And that's one of the huge mistakes, clients are doing when we have a workshop. There's never a way of how you transport, millions of the records in one single solution. That's not really doing it, So someone just asking for the password. The password is workshop 2026. So Mirko, if you just write that down, I think that I would be helpful. Good. So in that case, the very, very important, you're really not using any kind of business data there in your solutions. It's really about how your table has been built, how your columns have been, in the tables, how they've been arranged somewhere in forms and views. Not WhatsApp 2026. That will be also a cool workshop 2026 is the password. All right. Well, and there are this eternal battle between managed and unmanaged solutions. I don't know if you have heard of that. So here are the pros and the cons for unmanaged solutions. So unmanaged solutions were a long time a really good way to work with, So for example, you had a lot of freedom in your development in that case. So you're not really bothered by anything. You can develop, you are not blocked by anything. That's really great. So you can create, you can modify, you can delete components without any problems. You also have the ease of desegmentation. So if you, for example, need to merge, multiple small features into a single large solution, unmanaged solutions not really giving you a pain there. That was always easy, to do. And obviously, you also have no deployment overhead in development for that as well, because there is no layering logic to calculate. I'll come to this a little bit later when we have the next slide with the managed solutions. What you have is a problem if you're using unmanaged solutions is a permanent environment pollution. So what I mean by this, so if you're deploying something into a production environment, it's permanently there. And if you just find out that there is some kind of a mistake, you just can't roll back easily. You can't, because it is more or less in one layer. So there's not multiple layers like you just have with managed solutions. So you just can't roll that back easy. And that also blocks you from future updates as well. So what do you mean by this? So any unmanaged change imported into the environment is been on a top layer, so on the active layer. So anything what you now import with a managed solution will never override something which you just imported as an unmanaged solution. That means in that case, you have a real problem with that. So in that case, either you stay completely on managed solutions or you decide to go completely with unmanaged solutions, but don't make a mix because the unmanaged solution will always win in that case. And last but not least, managed solutions is something where Microsoft is just doing a lot of, I don't want to say pressure, but a lot of convincing talk, let's say it like this, where they say, go with a managed solution, you will be much, much happier. So what is definitely a huge advantage is you do have a clean uninstall and data integrity. That means in that case that you, when you have something rolled out, but you just need to roll it back, you can just do it easily by just uninstalling and that's it. And the good thing is you can't change it there. You can't change something which you have imported with a managed solution. It's locked. That's why we have it, we call it also the lock effect as well. So if people trying to change something or look into it, it will not work for them. And you have also the chance of a sophisticated versioning and patching there. So for example, if something is not working out of box, you can have a small solution as a patch fix. And then in that case, then it's some kind of documented there as well. That never works with unmanaged solutions. But, and that's where we have run, especially in my early years, when we have managed solutions to use the very first time, into the dependency hell risk in that case. So the problem is that if you have multiple managed solutions and they are depending or reference to each other, then you can't just uninstall if a dependency is there. It doesn't allow you. And that's some kind of an issue. So especially if there are more dependencies there. So you always have just to look that you just try to avoid the dependencies as much as possible. Sometimes not possible, but that's where everything's been built up, so you can't just uninstall that. There's also an increased troubleshooting latency, and especially with the layering complexity, you have many layers. They are on read only, and if you just come and say, okay, I just want to do a small fix, in production because nothing is works, and going the LML cycle would take too much time, then obviously that would not be really working out. So in that case, that's also some kind of challenging you. So if someone is just asking me today, I would say go with managed solutions instead of unmanaged solutions because the advantages are bigger today as with managed solutions. But if you just ask, solution architects, you will always get one who say go with managed solutions and the other one say go with unmanaged solutions.